Hi, I'm John from Midnight Anytime Blinds. I want to show you today what will come in your pack when you order an eSmart blind. You'll receive your pelmet with a light blocker on the back of it, your blind with a motor already installed. There'll be two side tracks. One will have the USB-C charge port. You'll get 16 screws, 4 spacers, 2 end caps, 2 brackets for the blind, your wool pile, your remote plus the charger for the remote, and the USB-C charger for your motor. And depending on the size of the blind you ordered, you might also get one of these motors instead, which has got a different charge port because of the size of the motor, and the RF hub, which is an optional extra, and your instruction sheet. Basically all you need for the install is a driver drill or a Phillips head screwdriver, or a standard drill that you can pre-drill holes for. You don't have to pre-drill your holes for the screws. We recommend that you do, just so you know exactly what you're drilling into, but it's entirely up to you. We'll supply you with 30mm 6-gauge screws. That covers virtually 90% of the standard installs. Now we'll supply as a standard 6-gauge 30mm screws, which will cover most installs. Obviously if you're drilling into plaster, there'll be other equipment that you'll need, and that's up for you to decide. But the 30mm 6-gauge will cover 90% of installs. First step is we're going to put the pelmet in. Okay, so we've got the pelmet with the light blocker attached. Start with cap number 1, which goes on the left-hand side of the pelmet, which is my right. Just clips on the end. They're pretty tight, but nice and secure. And the little notch always goes at the top of the pelmet where the wool pile is. Okay, it's ready to go in. Now let's put the pelmet on. So just lift it into place. If it's a bit tight, don't worry about it. If it's a bit loose, don't worry about it. That's fine. That's actually perfect fit. I'll pre-drill my holes in the center. You only need to go in a couple of mils just to break the wood. Once the first screw's in, that's going to stay there. Do the second one. But don't tighten it all the way up. That's just really to hold the pelmet in place. So the holes are already pre-drilled in the pelmet in the center and for the brackets. Okay, the pelmet's in. Next step is to put the brackets in. The bracket with the tongue on it, that's the one that's going to engage the motor. That goes on the right-hand side of the pelmet, and the pin side goes on the left-hand side. If your motor has been ordered the other way around, obviously the tongue side will go on the left, pin side will go on the right. Don't screw them all the way home the first time, just put both in. That's being held in place. Okay, so now we're going to do the pin side. So the pelmet's still quite loose because we haven't screwed all the screws home as yet. So make sure you're happy with the location of the pelmet before you start to finalise them. Right, so you can use the screws to actually tilt the pelmet as well, so you'll see that to line up and make them nice and square. Main thing is make sure the brackets are pushed hard against the reveal, and then you screw them home. Okay, now we're going to go back to the motor side, pushing the bracket hard against the reveal. Pelmet's nice and straight. Now we're just going to tighten up the 2 screws in the center. And that's it. That way the pile's been nicely crushed all the way along the top, and there'll be no light getting in through there. So next step is we're going to put the blind in. I've taken the USB-C cable out of the side track that I showed you before, and we're actually going to insert that into the motor now. It'll just help when we line it up to put it inside the pelmet. Because what we need to line up the slots in the end of the motor, which you'll see, with the tongue that's in that bracket on the right hand side. And they're lined up when that cable is hanging straight down. That's ready to go in. When it's up there, it's a spring-loaded pin, and you simply, once it's up, when we've got it lined up, we rotate that to bring the pin out and lock itself away. But for now, we keep that retracted. Let's put it in. So I'm watching to keep the cable pretty much straight down and line that tongue up with the center of the blind. It's pretty tight, and you just push it in. When we come to this side, we're going to open that pin with one click, turning it anti-clockwise. Should click in, that's the first click, and then rotate it again until it's really locked in. That's it. Blind's in place. Okay, so you can see here, that's the USB-C port with a cable in it. And right next to it, that's the on-off button for the motor. When the motor's on the right-hand side, it's at the front. When the motor's on the left-hand side, obviously it's on the other side of the USB-C. But that's all it is. And now we're going to pair the motor to the remote. The remote's a 16 channel, which means they can control up to 16 blinds and fully rechargeable. The new regulations mean you can't get to the batteries anymore, but we supply a charge cable with them. You've got the up button for the blind to go up, stop and down, and then the two left and right toggle buttons are what you use to actually go through the channels to line them up with your blinds. We're going to start with number 1 for this blind. So I've got that on channel 1. And all we do is push the on-off button for the motor until you get that jiggle, and then you press up on your remote, and that makes the blind jiggle again. That means they're linked. Now we're going to set the limits on the blind using the remote. We'll start with setting the upper limit. You always have to start with that one. So you're using a paper clip, just gently press inside the program hole in the side of the remote until the blind jiggles. And now we use the up button to take it to the spot that we want. We recommend you leave at least 50 to 60 mil of fabric showing, because the blinds operate by gravity, and that gives it a good start when they have to go down. So that's where I want to leave that. So I press the program button again. Now the top limit is set. Now we're going to move it down to the bottom. And what you want to do is keep an eye that things are nice and level, that it's fairly parallel with the inside of the reveal on this side, as well as that side, and that it's running nice and straight. And what we're going to do is take it to the edge of the windowsill, and then keep taking it down incrementally until you can see the metal on the tube, because we almost want to unroll the blind completely. That's fine, I can see the metal now, and now I'm going to take it back up again. Just make sure it doesn't get caught on the windowsill. And what that does, it just means the blind's totally unwound, and now it's going to roll up nice and flat on that tube, because during transport it might have come a bit loose. So for now, we can see there's a bit of a lean on this windowsill. Not many windowsills are perfect, but we'll deal with that in a little while. So I'm going to set it there. I'll press the remote, the program button again, and then you do it once more, and they should be locked in now. So now it should be one touch of the button, and that should go up to its limit. Okay, now that the blind's in and it's paired up with the remote, we're going to set our upper and lower limits. Always set the upper limit first. So we're going to press the program button until the blind jiggles. And now you can move it up or down depending on where you want to set it. So I always recommend at least 50 to 60 mils at the top of seeing fabric, just to give it a good start, because they operate on gravity. So that gives the blind a good start later on when we have the side tracks on. Press the program button again, and now that top limit is set. Now we bring it down to the bottom. And then just by pressing the button slowly, it'll jog down until you can see the actual tube that the blind's attached to. Once you see the bare metal, then we're going to take it up a little bit more. Back to the windowsill. What that does is just totally unravel the blind from the tube, and now it can roll up nice and flat. Take it back down to the windowsill. Now we're going to set the bottom limit here, and we can adjust it later easily. Press the program button till the jiggle, and then press it a second time, and that locks them all in. You'll know the programs are locked in when you press the button once and it goes up by itself. So now we're just going to check how the blind is actually rolling up on itself. So we're just going to do a quick measure. You can see on this side it's roughly 55mm from the bottom of the pelmet to the top of the crossrail. On this side it's 70mm, so it's a fair bit of difference there, 15mm. And you can also see the way the fabric is wound up on the tube. It's slightly wanting to go to the left, so we need to do an adjustment with the way the blind rolls up. So we've got that 15mm difference between the right hand side and the left hand side, and that could be caused just simply by the blind not rolling up straight, which we can adjust, and you can see here with the fabric not going exactly straight on the tube. But you can double check it by bringing it back down again, and we'll see what it lines up like on the windowsill. And that'll give us an indication of what's the best way to fix it. So that should stop automatically at the predetermined setting that we had. And now we can still see that the left hand side is higher than the right hand side, which is also follows up to there. So to me the blind needs to be tilted, which means we need to adjust the brackets. Now because the fabric was pulling to the left, we need to make an adjustment to the right, the way that the blind is going to roll up onto this tube, and vice versa. So if it's a bigger gap here, we need this part of the blind to wind up more to close that gap. And we do that by letting the blind go all the way to the bottom limit, press the program button, it's ready to do something, and we'll bring it down as far as we can without letting it come all the way off the roll. Stop it when you see the metal, and all we do is simply add some masking tape. What we're going to do is put a few pieces of masking tape on the right hand side. It's about 15mm, so we'll probably need about 5 pieces. And just sticking that straight onto the blind. You won't see that because that's going to be up in the blind when it's rolled up and held into place. Because what we want to do is increase the diameter on this side of the blind, and that'll straighten up the bottom bar. So now we'll take the blind up to the bottom limit again. So it'll automatically go to where it was before. And now we go all the way up again and see what it looks like. So now we'll check it again. Okay, so that looks a lot better, but we'll just double check it. Yep, 55, perfect. And you can see down the side here, the blind's rolling up perfectly straight. So now what we want to do is reduce this gap that we've got at the bottom of the blind, because as you can see, it's not perfectly level. So we're going to tilt the blind. So now what we're going to do is just take the blind back out, and I'm going to drop that bracket just slightly, maybe about 5 or 6mm, just to get the blind as even as we can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer you've got it, the better the blackout will be at the bottom. So we'll take the cable off first, just so we don't damage it. And grab the motor end, and just going to pull that out. It's usually pretty tight. Just loosen that a bit. Come to this end, rotate the pin clockwise until it comes loose. I'll just drop it out. So here what we're going to do is just loosen up the 2 screws on the bracket, put a couple of washers in there just to drop it down by about 4 or 5mm, and that'll tilt the blind the way that we want. Okay, so we're just going to loosen off this bracket up here, not take it all the way out, just loosen it enough so we can put the washers in there as a spacer. That should be enough. Now I'm just going to put a couple of washers up in there. I'll put 4 washers in there. You don't have to use washers, you can use anything that you like to make it space. And then we'll just do it back up again. Make sure it's nice and firm. Okay, so now I'm going to be pretty confident that blind's going to be nice and square, or a lot more square than it was. So I'm going to put 2 more horizontal screws in each bracket, and that'll really fix it in place. Usually with wooden reveals you don't really need it because they're nice and strong, but it's just a good backup to make sure the blind never comes loose. Okay, so I'm just going to pre-drill a couple of little holes in the sides of the bracket. The bracket's already drilled. Only go into the wood about 4 or 5mm. Don't want to make it too loose. So these are going out to the side. Like I said, this is being pretty fussy. I'm going to do the same on this side. And like we said when we started, if this is a gyprock reveal, you need to make sure you feel something solid in there. So don't just screw into the gyprock. You should be able to go deep enough to feel the wood frame behind it. So the 30mm screws might not always be long enough. They should be, but not always. So it needs to be nice and solid and really feel that the drill has bottomed out. Okay, so now we're going to put the blind back. So as before, plug the cable into the USB so we can line it up. Rotate anti-clockwise again, and that's locked in. Now it'll all still be linked up to the remote with the existing limits in it. You can see that's pretty much where it was before. Okay, so now we can see that's a lot more level than it was before. Much happier with that. Okay, another quick tip. When the blind is halfway down, just check that the cross rail is pretty much in the center. That's like 46mm. And this side is the same, 45. So they'll always be around the 45 and 46, but you don't want it too far to one side. So now we're going to do the side tracks. The closed end is for the bottom and the open end is at the top. So this is our left side. They simply slot straight in and underneath. Okay. Always have the blind down a bit while you're doing this, because you don't want to knock these little caps off. Same on this side. Pull the blind forward a little bit. Slot it straight in, up to the top, and just have them sitting there for now. First thing, take the blind all the way to the top, just to keep it out of the way while we're screwing it in. 3 screws for each side. It's pre-drilled holes in the side tracks already. So make sure it's nice and square, flush with the pelmet at the front, and running nice and straight down to the windowsill. And push hard against the bottom and push hard against the side, and just screw it in. That's it. When you've done the center one, just make sure that the side track runs nice and parallel with the edge of your windowsill. If it doesn't, we use the little spacers, which you'll find in your pack, and you simply hook that on the back of the screw before you go hard with it, and that'll twist it back around to square it up. All depends on how square your windowsill is. That's perfectly square down the bottom, so I'm happy with that. Top. Okay, that one's in. And you also check to make sure there's no gap between the pelmet and the side track, just for neatness sake. Again, if that's twisting around to the back, just put a spacer behind the screw, it'll bring it back nice and flush. And now we'll do the right hand side. Middle screw, making sure it's nice and straight. Really push against the wall and pushing down at the same time. That's nice and straight. And the top one. Put a spacer behind the screw, tighten it up. That's it, perfect. Don't go crazy over tightening the screws. As long as you get a nice flush edge down here. And the tops, you'll see it does move out a little bit, about 1 mil at the top, but they need to overlap with the caps. That's just how they're meant to be. So using the foam retainers, we're going to tuck the cable back into the side track at the back. Just bring it up to where it's comfortable at the bottom. Just work your way up, one in the middle. And then one at the top. There'll be a bit of cable left over, but don't worry about that, that's fine. Okay, that's all in. Now we're just going to drop the light blocker into that little bracket. Same on the other side. Just tuck it in around the back cap as well. Okay, let's give it a test run. Okay, that sits really nicely. Another tip, because the wool pile is nice and new, it's going to need a bit of time to bed down. So when it reaches its bottom, just give it a little push, just so it starts to bed into any impurities on the windowsill itself. If you're not happy where the limits are set, they're very easy to reset. Always let them run to their limit, either to the top or the bottom, to the limit that you want to reset. Simply press the program button until the motor jogs, take it up or take it down to where you want to do it, and press the button again. Now that's been changed. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm John from Midnight Anytime Blackout Blinds. Have a great sleep.